He will be in a second. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I will now call today's meeting of the Merrimack Planning Board to order. For purposes of notice, if anybody speaks to the board, there is a clipboard there which we would appreciate you putting your name and address on so we can record who actually attended. I will announce that the next planning board, which would normally be on July the 3rd if we follow our program, but for some obscure reason, I think the following day we're all celebrating the independence of this country. So the next planning board will actually be on the 17th of July. So you can put that in your calendars, and that will be at 7 o'clock in this room as usual. All right, in that case, we will now move on to the Planning and Zoning Administrator's report. Robert.
All I have tonight is that the staff recommends that the Devonshire Energy and Flatley subdivision are not of regional impact.
Thank you, Robert. Can I have a motion that we accept the staff's recommendation on those two matters? Sorry, I should have appointed Nelson as a full member. Sorry, Nelson, I do apologize.
Okay, in that case, I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that
you got the hint, huh?
that both of these projects do not have regional impact.
Thank you very much. Can I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Neil. So the motion is to accept the staff's recommendation that the two items which will appear later on this meeting are not of regional impact. All in favour say aye. Aye. Anybody so that's 4-0-0. Okay, nothing else, Robert? Have we any questions for Robert?
No.
Okay, then we'll move on to the next item, which is item 3, which is the Merrimack Parcel and Premium Outlets owner review for consideration of an amendment to the previously approved site plan for Merrimack Premium Outlets. By the way, I should apologise. For the first time, the planning board is going without paper. We're doing it all electronic, so for the old fools like me, it's harder, but bear with us. To allow for a modification to the site's access driveway, which is addition of a roundabout to Premium Outlets Boulevard to provide access to the Merrimack Park Place site. Parcels are located at 80 Premium Outlets Boulevard in the I-2 Industrial and Aquifer Conservation Districts and Wellhead Protection Area, tax map 3C, lot 19101. And this item is continued from the June 5th, 2018 Planning Board meeting. I'll just give a quick explanation in case anybody doesn't understand. We've approved the Merrimack Park Place site, which is the development at the bottom of Industrial Drive, if you like. But to do it, they have had to there needs to be some modifications to the originally approved, the outlet mall site. So this is what this is to discuss, how the connection is going to be put in. So I'll throw it open to the applicant. Sorry, Rob.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Mark Borostic. I'm a project engineer with BHB. Here tonight representing Merrimack Parcel A LLC and Merrimack Premium Outlets LLC, the owner, for a site plan amendment.
I'm sorry, is the green light on?
It is.
It is?
Can you pull it closer?
You may want to just pull it. They're having a hard time
It
hearing
is.
you. Thank you.
Pull it closer. Is that better? Yes, thank you. Sorry.
We can hear you, but it's the people at home who
Understood.
would like to.
So we're here tonight for a site plan amendment to the Premium Outlets site plan approval for construction of a roundabout at the access driveway for Park Place. At the last meet, here with me tonight is Robin Bowser. Any traffic questions, she can help me out with that. As discussed at the last planning board meeting, the board had asked to have the town's engineering review consultant, CLD Fuss & O'Neill, review the roundabout design. We submitted a draft they had provided comments. We had provided them with a draft layout and met with them on May 21st, along with planning staff, to discuss their comments and make sure that we were on the same page. Then we have hardlined those revisions into a modified set of plans, which we submitted on June 7th. There were 5 outstanding comments, I think, at that time, which we also responded to. They had asked for truck turning templates, which we provided, signage in 2 locations, and there was a suggestion for a change of material where we provided some separation for the lane approaches into the roundabout. My apologies. So this is the modified site plan for the roundabout. Some of the minor modification, I mean, as you can see, it's generally the same as what was submitted at the planning board hearing for Park Place. A couple of modifications that were discussed with CLD Fuss and O'Neill was some additional deflection to basically create traffic calming to prevent speeding or discourage speeding through the roundabout. So there's a sharper angle on the approach coming from Industrial Drive to slow people down on the approach. There's some lane separation that was added on the approaches to align the drivers better with the appropriate lanes. So here there is a painted gore that was introduced as well on the exiting movement to get people better aligned and create some separation, which also aids in providing some separation for large trucks, delivery trucks, as they navigate through the roundabout. Within the roundabout itself, there was additional striping that was added. A couple other things that were discussed was some signage to help people navigate to their destination.
Sorry, that's my machine. I will stop it.
So there's a couple of signs that we've proposed. The one on the left is a more conventional DOT type sign that is proposed based on recommendation from CLD that would be placed in the eastbound, for the eastbound direction on Industrial Drive in the grass median. This will help people that are have Merrimack Park Place as a destination to get in the left lane so that they're lined up as they take that double left into the site. That's the intent of that sign. I will point out that that sign, being in DOT right-of-way, will need DOT's approval. The other sign, which is proposed on site, is the blue sign to the right, and that we're proposing to be consistent with the existing on-site directional signage for the premium outlets, but as you can see, we have a Park Place left turn arrow added. So that was to address the final comments that we received from CLD. And
Excuse me, is that green sign supposed to be what you're actually putting in there? What does 2 Broadway mean?
we've had some conversation with the fire department about naming the streets. They're not public streets, but the driveways of the Park Place site. And We've suggested some names. One of the names that we were looking at was Park Place, but there were too many similar named streets in town, so the entrance driveway here that comes into Park Place is proposed to be called Broadway. And that was, I believe, I spoke to Captain Manueli before, I believe that was an acceptable street name. So that was the naming convention that's shown on that green sign.
But surely, and by the way, I'm now going to relieve myself of the responsibilities and pass the job on to my chairman, who's welcome here. Surely putting a name like that would confuse anybody. I mean, who the average person coming into this area, Broadway, what the hell is that? I mean, that to me, that's a song and dance place down in New York. Surely that's not a... And I'm not trying to be rude to Captain Manueli and the fire department, but I don't think that's at all a good idea, that name. I mean, there's got to be something more specific. Just saying to Broadway, it would mean nothing.
It's my understanding the DOT's policy is typically that it needs to be a street name that gets put on any directional signage. The name of Broadway, I can defer to the owner. I mean, if
I understand.
that's the name that we've selected for the street itself.
I'd be more than happy to listen to what John Manueli, the fire department's going to say. And don't forget to sign in, John.
Yep. John Manueli, Merrimack Fire Marshal. The process of naming streets, we basically follow the New Hampshire 911 regulations and such. And what we have to do when we name a street is ask the property owner to give us some names. In this particular case, because they were calling it Park Place, we said, well, give us some New York-style names to have a theme, so that if we're going to an area, we're going to know it right away. All right, it's a New York-style name. We know which area we're going to. We're trying to do this routinely around town based on what type of a development it is. There's a development going in eventually on Wire Road that all of the streets have something to do with apples. And that'll kind of cue people in. All right, we're going to know which development we're going to. In this particular case, they presented us with a bunch of names, and we have to look at names within the town of Merrimack to make sure none of them conflict. And Broadway did not conflict with any of the other names, and I believe there was a couple of others that were presented for the other streets, and I don't remember them off the top of my head. But we basically had to pick them so they didn't conflict with existing street names. For instance, the state will no longer allow the name Wood or Pine because there's, I think, 5 or 6 streets in town named Wood, and it causes confusion with 911.
I understand the 911 confusion, and I certainly respect the wish of the fire department to have names that your teams can rapidly access in the need for emergency services. I'm not objecting to the name whatever it is, Broadway, but I just think that doesn't really help out-of-town visitors. But I will be quiet. If the DOT isn't going to allow anything else, then I suppose
It's not that they don't allow things, Alistair. It's we basically work with the developer on names that are acceptable. I believe Wall Street may have been another.
Yeah, what I was really saying
possibility.
is I'm quite happy with Broadway, but I would like something more detailed to explain to people because, anyway, I'll shut up. Carry on, please.
Thank you.
Go on,
throw
Paul,
2 cents. So, well, first of all, thank you to everybody for excusing my few minutes being late. I really apologize for it, and thank you for the indulgence. Thank you for getting started, too. In terms of, Broadway as a street name or something else, there's a Broadway in Salem. Obviously, we all kind of know different street names that are used over and over again, and I think that, people will take note of it, and it'll be novel for a second, and then people get used to it, and then they'll associate it with where they want to go. So it doesn't really take a deep dive, in my view, for folks to kind of understand that thing, and we'll connect the road with whatever the road name ends up being. So I guess I just...
Carry on, please. I just think it's difficult.
Are you... I walked in kind of the middle of the conversation. Were you in the middle of your presentation on the...
Sure.
Is there more that you'd like to do?
I mean, that was I was pretty much wrapping up at that point. So just a reminder that we're here for a site plan amendment to the Premium Outlets project for the roundabout at this time. the last piece on the signs, the white and green sign shown here. The location of it is a little hard to see there, but it's proposed to be in the grass median prior to entering into the double left turn to access the site. So that's the green sign, and then the blue sign would actually be, that's not a DOT sign, but it's in keeping with the style of the existing sign. That would be actually on site once you make the turn in, would direct you to. Honestly, my preference would be to have Park Place on the sign here, just because that's the name of the destination, but it's really street names that need to be on the DOT sign as opposed to destinations. But I understand your
Will there be one on the other side coming from exit 10?
There will not. There's not one proposed on the other side. It's because coming from that direction, you're in one lane taking a right into the site. The concern that we discussed with CLD is the fact that there's a double left coming in from the eastbound direction. If you're in the right lane of the two lanes and you want to go to Park Place, then you'll have to take that left and then get over a lane to get to Park Place. So we're just trying to give people some advance notice if you're going to Park Place or to Broadway to get in the left lane.
So if you do take a right, you still have to get over a lane to get into the
You will.
take your left.
Correct.
Kind of in the same fashion.
Correct.
Could you put the big picture of the roundabout back up?
Sure. So the that blue sign would be here. And in fact, there is an existing blue sign in this vicinity here that would be relocated here that currently and would continue to say Premium Outlets straight ahead. So as you're coming through, you'd have that as a, you'd see that in the foreground as a target. That. If there's any other questions, we'd be happy to
Any other
answer
questions by members of the board?
Yeah, as you come in on your entrance, you've got, I didn't catch what you said, there's a sort of hatched area between the two lanes just before you approach the roundabout. Is that's just on the ground? You aren't actually putting a solid concrete boot?
Correct. It's pavement markings on the ground.
Just pavement marking?
It's correct.
And what's the hatching that's around the roundabout? Is that
That
just
is-
hatching again?
That is all pavement hatching as well. Yes.
It's not going to be cobblestones like
there's
DOT?
Both, yes. There is cobblestones on the inside. Let me zoom in. So the outer area here to define the lanes, that is pavement markings. The inner area here is a raised it is a typical DOT style truck apron.
Excuse me, what did you call it?
Truck apron. A DOT,
Yeah.
it's a cobblestone truck apron.
Oh, it's cobblestone.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
that's what I wanted to know.
Right.
Okay.
It's meant to, it's not intended for, everyday passenger vehicles to travel on it, so we want to try to discourage people from using that.
And what's the inner circle?
That is landscaped. So that's landscaped.
Okay.
The inner circle will be green space, and there are the typical chevron signs, so as you approach it, it points you in the direction of travel.
Okay.
Other questions? Nelson, you had some?
Well, I had more on landscaping. I didn't see any landscaping plan that went with this, and I wondered what the landscaping thought was. I saw that you were going to have grass, basically grass in that center circle, but I didn't see any landscaping on any of the embankments around or about, or anything provided in the plan set that I got.
Right. The landscaping was not copied over from the Park Place plan set, but it would be the intent is to update that set of plans with these, if approved, and that landscaping that was shown on the original set of plans would apply.
Can you tell
here.
us a little bit about what that was, or is,
I'm going to
will be?
pull that landscaping plan up right now. I believe it was lawn, is my understanding.
So they sent you this. I got it from town office. Yeah, yes, because I wanted that. So the Park Place plan is going to have some landscaping off to that side where
Correct.
that is.
So there are some trees and shrubs planted in there, but predominantly lawn.
Okay. So in terms of what would be if you're entering the site to the right or in the island itself, other than the grass in the island, there's no additions or changes to landscaping?
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Nelson, you have-
Well, you say no additions or changes. What are these little Mercedes-Benz signals?
No,
symbols?
I think no additions or changes from what is seen here.
Oh,
So
okay.
this was in the original plan set for the Park Place project. So the landscaping you see here is what would be in the roundabout as well.
And what are those? What do those represent? So I can't read it from here.
I do not have the plant listing handy, but
Although I'm interested in kind of the answer as well, I think we also have to acknowledge that that's a separate site plan that was already been
Right.
dealt with by the board.
there's a
Well,
call
it
out for
isn't. It
there's a-
isn't. This is modifying that site plan.
Well, it's modifying the Merrimack Premium Outlets one to add the roundabout, but Park Place isn't before us today.
There are three
und-
pin oaks and 5 balsam firs shown on that
Okay.
plan.
Then-
So the smaller trees here would be evergreen balsam firs, and the 3 other trees are shown as pin oaks.
Okay, it's been thought about. I just hope that it gets captured properly. If the designer is going to build to the plan you submitted tonight,
Sure.
that other information should get on here somewhere.
Right. It'll all be incorporated into the one plan set, and my apologies for not adding those plants on the plan set.
That's an important point to capture. Make sure
Okay.
that we do that when we get to making
Yeah,
decisions.
when we
if
make
do
the
too.
decision, right.
Other questions, Nelson?
That's all I have tonight, right now.
Okay. So, because this is a modification of a previously approved site plan, we don't have to accept it or determine that it's complete. There are no waivers requested. We can open up the floor to see if there is any abutters or citizens who wish to weigh in. Are there any? If there are none, we'll close the public hearing and let the board begin its own deliberations or potentially consider taking some action. What's the will of the board?
So,
Nelson?
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to approve this plan with the conditions we just talked about, that we get the landscaping shown on the proper plans that are being used for building. And
Is there a
then that's
second?
it, yeah.
Thank you, Nelson. Is there a second for Nelson's motion?
Second.
Second by Counsel Koenig. Any discussion? All in favor of granting approval, subject to adding the landscaping from the Park Place plan? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us tonight, 5-0-0. So there you are, you're all set, motion
Thank you.
carries.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is item number 4. It's Peter Olivier and Sherry Olivier, applicant, and Siam 04 Realty as the owner. Review for acceptance and consideration of a waiver of full site plan review to permit on-site storage of tractor trailers and parking for a business located off-site. The parcel is located at 75 Daniel Webster Highway in the I-1 Industrial and Aquifer Conservation Districts, Tax Map 2B Lot 28. Robert, is there anything that we need to know before we take up this item?
I just want to note there is a letter of continuance from the applicant in the packet. During plan review, it was kind of discovered that part of what the applicant is proposing was left off of the application by mistake and therefore left off of the legal notice. So we need to continue that to July 17th.
So there's more going on the site than we initially thought, so we've got to continue it till July 17th, you said?
Yes.
What's the will of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we grant the request of the applicant to continue this item to the meeting of July the 17th at 7 p.m. in this room with no further... Oh, he's got to go back. He's got to give notice to abutters because that's one of the things he didn't do properly.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
there's got to be full notice to all abutters.
Yes.
Is there a second for Alistair's motion?
I'll second that.
Motion and a second to continue to July 17th with new notice to abutters. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 500 to continue that item on our agenda. That brings us to item 5 on our agenda, which is Eric Silva as the applicant and William Silva as the owner. Review for acceptance and consideration of a waiver of full site plan review to construct a 700 square foot office space addition. The parcel is located at 444 Daniel Webster Highway in the C2 Commercial and Aquifer Conservation Districts, tax map 5D4, lot 54-1. Robert, is there anything that we need to know before we hear from the applicant?
Nope, this is just a very simple waiver of full site plan. They're proposing a small office addition to the existing structure, so I would just let them make their presentation.
Excellent. Is the applicant here? Please come forward. That doesn't seem to be in my packet here.
That's not.
Yeah, they're right.
Shire, no.
That is called Silva, Eric Silva.
Oh, Eric Silva, I've got it. Do you want to share with me?
Was it sent separately, though? Because I don't have it in the electronic packet.
It was on the complete packet.
Oh, you're right. I didn't open the
It's
complete
on the
packet.
complete packet. It's not on, I don't think there was an individual.
All right, let's take a minute so everybody can get a chance that's looking at it electronically and share with the people congregated here tonight. This is our first attempt as a
I did
board
explain that, Mr.
to
Chairman.
go electronic. Step into the century, 18 years in. So, give me a second to download that package and get to that right page. Feel free to sign in, and then when you're ready, you can begin talking, and I'll find my page as I get along the way. Please introduce yourself, though, for the record.
Eric Silva, owner, Silva
Page
Auto.
27.
Eric Silva and
Bill Silva.
Bill Silva. Okay. Please, make your
So-
presentation.
We're basically just looking to add on to the existing office space that we have, going 16 feet out down the width of the building by 50 feet. And we're just looking to get a waiver for the site plan for no drainage study.
Okay. So this is the automotive repair shop that's kind of nestled behind several other commercial uses. You got some access off of DW Highway, and most of the access is kind of off of Woodward.
Yeah.
Is that right?
They were very
Woodward?
Yeah.
Woodbury. I'm
Woodbury.
sorry, not Woodward. Okay. This site, I had some questions and some interest in it because it's obviously been developed for quite a while. I think they determined its original trip before the planning board was in the 70s. And so I don't think that there's been kind of recent review or even understanding of what the business is about, what you do there, whether it's all, tires, repairs, are there cars there that are for sale, are there cars there that are salvaged or stored, or tell me more about what you do in your business.
General repair, no salvage type vehicles at all. We are a dealer as
Okay.
well. So general repair, tires.
So you have some cars for sale. You said you're a dealer.
We do. Yep.
Are you are you a tire dealer or a car dealer?
Both.
Car dealer,
Yep,
okay.
car dealer.
So you got some cars for sale there. How many parking spaces do you have on the site?
The site plan was for 19.
Okay. And it's not paved, so it's kind of
Not
wherever
paved.
you want to put them?
Yep.
Now, I know in the satellite picture that got distributed with our stuff, there's a storage, like a truck trailer
Mhm.
that's there for storage. Is that still there on the site? Do you use that?
It is.
Okay. What's in
Oh,
there?
which one are you talking about?
The one that's to the south on your site?
South on the side. I don't know what the
That might have been
current,
an old picture.
yeah.
That's not there now.
If you're looking off Google Maps, I don't believe that's been
Just,
updated for
it
quite a
wasn't
while.
there. It wasn't there on Monday, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
But
yeah,
there-
it's probably
but
something
There
that's
was
there.
one way back that's not there anymore.
Okay. So is outdoor storage, how many cars do you have for sale?
Currently, we have a couple. It's not a used car lot by any means.
Just,
They come
word of
around,
mouth kind of
yeah,
thing.
Maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah.
okay. How many employees do you have?
We have us two as owners and 4 employees.
Okay, so probably 6 cars for employees, a couple for the ones for sale. How many
That
spaces do you have
usually-
for customers?
We both drive cars that are for sale.
Yeah, I wouldn't,
So,
yeah, it would
yeah.
make a lot of sense. And then your customers, if they come in for service, are they leaving their car outside until you're ready to pull it into the
Yeah.
bay? How many of those? Kind of tell me what the volume of that flow looks like.
Depends on the day. It's kind of a tough
Yeah.
answer.
Give me a sense.
10, 15, no, probably 10.
All right, so 10 might get dropped off, and then they're kind of shuttled in and out of the bays during the
Yeah,
day?
it's just tough because they revolve all day. It just,
Yeah.
it's hard to say.
What's actually paved around your building? How close to the building or far or anything at all outside the building? Is
It's
there
about
any
30 feet
apron?
in front of the doors.
About 30 feet in front of the doors is
Yeah,
paved?
front and back.
On the inside and the outside?
Yeah.
Do you have floor drains inside for?
No.
Okay. So, my approach to this, or what's in my mind as I'm looking at something that hadn't been before us in a little while, is just to make sure that there's no oil leaking into the ground or any of those kinds of things. And obviously, the intent of the original site plan was to pave quite a bit of the lot. And I'm not here to try to make you do that, but I do want to understand what's going on the lot. And
I think eventually we'd like to pave it. It's just going to take time. We just purchased the place a year and a half ago.
I can imagine, and I don't even know what it would cost to pave that much, but it's a pretty big lot
Yeah.
that you have back
Probably
there.
going to happen in steps.
Right. So no floor drains, oil spill kits and that kind of thing on site if you have anything leaking out of a car?
Yeah.
Yep.
Where do you keep them in your building, spill kits?
We got a storage room in the back.
Okay. Have you had any instances where things have spilled, either inside or outside, that you had to go clean up?
Every now and then,
Yeah, nothing big.
we should
Okay.
go out and clean it up right away if we have any kind of issue.
Okay. The plan from the 70s is really kind of primitive in terms of describing to us what's going on with drainage and where the water goes when it rains and all that stuff. What can you tell me from your own experience, seeing what happens when it rains out there? Are you guys getting puddled water or stored water or anything like that?
Not so much around the building. A lot of water runs off the shopping center across the back part of the lot. And there's a retention area that it falls into. So pretty much all the water migrates into that far corner
Okay.
out towards Woodbury.
Do you have any relationship with the shopping center, or do they have easements to drain onto your property, or you onto theirs, or parking on each other's property?
I
or
think
anything?
there was an easement granted to the back portion of our lot when, I'm not sure if it was when they built the second building there, but I don't think there's anything in the ground there.
Yeah. It's not even clear to me from the plan that we had where the back of your lot is. Does it go all the way to that road that, well, call it a road, call it whatever that is, that you can drive from the shopping center over to Woodbury?
Yeah, I think we own just to the other side of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as it goes behind your building for whatever width of your building, that's yours?
Yeah, it's, I'm not sure exactly where all the lines are out there, but
According to the GPS, you actually own all the way to Woodbury Lane.
we own
Yeah,
to
to the
Woodbury.
corner.
Yeah, but I
We-
think on the other side of that road, it's probably within a foot or something. I'm not sure how far.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So either people are having a free go of it across your land, or there's some easement somewhere that said that they could?
The only thing that I've seen was there was an easement or right-of-way granted to the shopping center and for us
Yeah.
to pass over the, it was supposed to be a town-accepted road at some point, and I don't think that ever happened.
Oh, that back area is
That
supposed to
back
be
area.
a town accepted?
Yeah.
I mean, I can understand why that shopping center would want to have another access point just in case of
I
an
think
emergency.
it was put in for
so-
the shopping center, I think it was granted to the, like a egress or whatever for the shopping center when they built the building there, the second building.
Okay. And so, really what you're looking to do doesn't add any more to the automotive business, it's an office space?
Yeah, it's more for customers, comfort.
Okay. Does anyone else have comments or questions about what's proposed?
Well, Mr. Chairman, this is a very small change to a existing problem, if you will. It disturbs me that we don't have a a plot plan that shows the whole plot, and we don't know where the boundaries of the property are. And I don't like putting those kind of plans in our files, and I recognize it was done in 1978, and and here we are living with it. But I think we should, as a minimum, advise these people that if they're going to do anything more on this site, they really need to come to us with a full plan for the whole site. It shows the entire parcel, so that we're approving a parcel with a plan on a parcel, the full parcel.
There's good logic to that, and it reminds me that we have in the past taken a look at some sites that have a long history and added a note to whatever we approved to say that if there's anything going on that's not been approved in the past, we're not blessing it other than this office. So,
That's what I want to be really sure of.
you know, we're not necessarily taking what's gone on the site, because we really haven't gotten out there, and you're asking for a waiver of permission to do it. I think I'm inclined, based on the office use, to let you have that waiver, but I don't want to sort of hear a year from now that someone said, well, we've
is
got this
approved.
oil dump in the back, and the planning board said it's great. You know,
No.
those kinds of things obviously are not encapsulated in what we're approving with this. And I don't necessarily think that the site's got any of those kinds of environmental problems. It is kind of a unpaved site. Is there one of the things that's visible in the satellite photo that's attached to our package is some tires stacked up on what would be the west side of the building, facing that access road, kind of old used tires for recycling or something? What's the situation with those?
Our used tires end up in the back part of the building, close to the shopping center.
Okay.
And it's like every 2 weeks or wherever they come by and pick them up.
Okay. So how many do you collect in 2 weeks? Because it looks like a lot of them.
It depends on the time of year.
Yeah, it varies.
Yeah, and it could be anywhere from 30 tires to 100 tires. Yeah, it just depends on when the busy season is.
So who comes to get them? You pay somebody to do that, or
Yeah, we have a service that comes and picks them up.
do they take them so that they can use them for something and
I
it's
have no
free to
idea
you,
what
or
they
they
do with
charge
them.
you for it?
We pay to get rid of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I certainly think a 2 week schedule is appropriate for that kind of thing. I wouldn't want to see them hanging around any longer than that. I think that, first of all, a big old stack of tires is flammable, but it also breeds mosquitoes and all sorts of things that nobody else wants to have around, and not very sightly and all of that stuff. But obviously, people in the tire business are going to generate old tires. What can you do about it?
And we do what we can to get rid of them.
Yeah. That might have been what that old trailer was for, to store them inside of a trailer.
That was actually a trailer that I owned years ago.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, the previous owner let me use it down there.
Oh, okay.
It was storing equipment in it.
Right. So one of the things when I talk about us, considering what you put before us versus what's been approved before, I don't think that the sale of cars was part of the 1970s approval.
Well, that had been approved since then.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a
first
special
one came
exception on
before.
file for that use, so.
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Those are the kinds of things that we want to make sure that they're either on the record or we're not assuming that we're blessing them. But if they're on the record, you're entitled
Yeah, I
to do
think we
it.
came before the board in '98
Oh, excellent.
and get that approved.
Good. Check the boxes and get them done. Other comments or questions? So, Robert, procedurally, do we have to determine this is complete, or?
Yeah.
And as a part of complete, it contemplates that we're waiving full site plan review.
Yeah, you accept that it's complete, but I think you still have to grant the waiver for.
Right, of course,
Right.
but, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
What's the will of the board with respect to whether this application is complete?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept this application as substantially complete and contains sufficient information to enable us to invoke the board's jurisdiction and to make an informed decision.
Is there a second for Alistair's well said but motion?
It's not complete.
I know, that's the hard part. So you added substantially, I appreciate that. I'll second that.
There's a second by Councilor Koenig. I do think that, it is a relatively bare bones application because of the nature of what it is, but they're also asking for a waiver of full site plan review, which is kind of crossing off of the list all of the things that are part of a normal site plan review, which are, in essence, the difference between this and complete. And so I guess that's what the decision is for everybody, is the next consideration is to determine whether you'd waive full site plan review. Anyway, I have no other comments on the motion and the second. Does anyone else have comments on the motion to determine it complete? All in favor of finding the application complete, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? 3 in favor, nobody against, Nelson and Neil again, abstaining. So that motion carries to determine the application's complete. If there's no more presentation and the board doesn't have any other discussion, we could briefly open it up for the public to weigh in if there's any abutters or citizens who wish to. Are there any abutters or citizens who wish to weigh in on this application before the board considers what to do with it? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and then invite the board to entertain its deliberations.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we grant a waiver of full site plan review on the basis that specific circumstances relative to this subdivision will indicate the waiver will carry out the spirit and intent of the regulations. But in doing that, I will want in the final motion to add the sort of rider that you yourself described, that whilst this is a waiver of site plan review for putting in a small office, we are very concerned that if anything much else happens on this site, we're going to want a full site review.
Okay, so there's a motion to waive full site plan review with the caution to the applicant that further development would likely have us wanting full site plan review. Is there a second for Alistair's motion to waive full site plan review under that term?
I'll second it, but I'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
The wiggly runoff lines, were those added by you folks, or have those been on the plan forever? Or?
We didn't add anything to it.
No.
So the
So those
indications of the
concepts-
direction of water runoff, you
Right.
just,
Yeah, so the plan that they used, the only thing they did to it was that yellow highlighted area. Everything else was the original design back in 1978.
okay.
Of which one member of this board
Well, I can explain.
Was here.
So first thing I asked is whether Nelson signed this plan back in 1978.
You know, we didn't have any regulations then. You know, all the regulations that we have today have been developed since then.
I know.
Okay?
No, I
And,
get it. And
You
there
know,
wasn't
at that
peer
time,
review and those
there
sorts
were
of things.
just no regulations, and people did what they thought was adequate. You know, it's evolved over time. That's why we're giving you a little hard time.
Any other discussion on the waiver of full site plan review on those terms? My own comment is I'm inclined to vote in favor of it, but with a lot of reservations because it's a site that really hasn't had a close look to where the water runoff is going, and it's easy to suspect that either the car repair business or the cars being for sale could have anything from road salt to transmission, radiator oil coming off of them and going somewhere. And I don't want to put you in a position of saying today, pave the site, well, because it's more than paving the site to contain spills. You got to put curbing around it and then you got closed drainage and then oil separators, and it's a lot to get to what a auto shop would need to have today. If this was a brand new greenfield site and you wanted to put an auto shop on it, there's a lot of stuff. And I respect that you guys have been in business for a long, long time, and all you want to do is add a little office. But that does put us in a position where we're, maybe voting on something that if another applicant came forward with a green site, we wouldn't necessarily be inclined to take a look at. So I guess my message is that I'm voting yes, but boy, I don't love it. I would like to see some more engineering and some more development to understand really the environmental things. I think lighting and parking and those kinds of things, you guys have figured out how your business should run and whether you need enough parking spaces and whether putting 2 cars for sale takes away from the employees. Whatever that is, over 40 years, you guys have figured that out. I just want to make sure we're not doing anything bad to the environment. So I hope that you guys think the same way.
We do. And
if you do come back wanting to do more to the site,
come with that perspective that there's going to be a lot more, sort of expected and required to take a look at those kinds of things. And obviously, if you're ever aware of spills on your site, it isn't the Merrimack Planning Board that's going to come knocking on your door. It's the Department of Environmental Services and others that are interested in those kinds of things, and they're not very kind. They're not nice people. If any other discussion on the waiver of full site plan review? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining? So it is 3-0-1 with the same two gentlemen abstaining as before to grant the waiver of full site plan review. And the last order of business is to consider final action on the application if the board is so inclined.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we grant the application for them to put this little office on, but I want the writer put in very strongly that any further changes on this site are going to require full site plan review with all the necessary, bringing it up to 2018 standards from the 1978 plans, which they seem to be working off.
I'd ask it, before we open it up for a second, I'd ask if you would consider adding to your motion that the board is not approving or authorizing any unknowns or undisplayed information that we're not currently aware of that wasn't on a previous plan.
I'd be happy to have that added, Mr. Chairman.
With that in mind, is there a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Nelson, second
I'll
that
second.
one. Discussion, Tom?
So we haven't talked much about what you're doing, but you've got a 16 by 44 foot addition with a sloped roof going off towards your neighbors on the east side.
Mhm.
Are you doing anything to control the water runoff from the roof, or just planning to let it run out on the ground and roll back around the building, or?
Yeah, right now the water just kind of flows to that back corner of the lot. So I'm not really thinking it's gonna
But you're
make-
pushing it a different direction. You're pushing it towards your neighbors, towards DW Highway, off the roof, because it's sloped that direction.
It's high, yeah, it's high that way. It naturally runs.
Yeah, it's
So
graded
it's gonna-
towards.
It's going to run
Yeah.
back.
Very-
Yeah, it's
You're not going to
go
catch
in-
it with gutters and control it or anything? You're just going to let it fall on the ground?
It
And
would probably be better to let it fall in one place than to put in a gutter and force it. I think it'd have less impact running off the roof than it would be if we controlled it with a gutter. It's just gonna dump it out in the middle of the yard.
Well, it depends on what kind of erosion it causes in your non-paved area there, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, we'll obviously address it if it creates a problem there, but I don't think it's gonna be a big problem there.
from last night's storm, it would have been a big problem.
Well, we get the water runoff from the shopping center.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just, we go out and fix the yard when it digs it up. There's not much we can do about it. They have gutters over there and it's like a river coming through our yard when it rains real hard. There's no control from that.
And how far away are you going to end up being from your neighbors, do you know?
Oh, I think, from our property line, still 30 or 40 feet.
Do you drive through there, or is that
We
just?
drive around the back of the building that way, yeah.
Oh, you do, okay.
Yeah, there's I think there's a water easement there too. We have to be 20 feet, from our line over, and we fit in that with no problem. So we couldn't build anything over there, do anything with that part of the property. We've got the fire department look at it, the building department, and nobody seems to think there's a problem with it.
Your old plan shows 25 feet from the corner of the building to your parking spaces and 22 on the east side, and you're jutting into that, so you're making it a lot tighter to where that indicated parking is on that side.
Yeah, well, where the addition's gonna be, we're gonna start 6 feet off the front corner of the building,
Yeah.
So we're really not gonna impact any of that.
You got enough space left between that
yeah.
corner and that, or wherever you're going to end up parking. You'll move parking obviously to where it can fit.
Right, but yeah, the addition's not gonna encroach on any of that parking that's there.
How much space do you have between the building and the parking? Normally, like a travel lane and a parking lot for us is 24, 26 feet,
36 feet before they put the building up.
and they're taking 16 out of it, so they're going to be 20 feet off.
Yeah, I think it's even more than that.
I'm just looking, oh, sorry, plus
There's
another,
20 there's 20
40,
feet,
42
and then
feet,
36.
yeah, sorry, there is, yeah, you're right, there is.
Yeah, so there's like 50-something feet there, 60 feet.
So that's quite a bit of space.
42.
Other comments or questions?
And the addition ends at the end of the existing building, or does it extend past?
No, it's gonna end even with the back
Okay.
part of the building. The front part, we're gonna recess it in like 6 feet.
So you're gonna utilize some of the interior space of the existing building to accommodate for this? Is that,
The only thing, we got a window in the office now. We'll make that a doorway to just be able to walk through, but this new addition's just gonna be separate from the
Okay.
shop.
Okay. Other comments or questions? If there are no other questions, what's the will of the board with respect to final action?
You have a motion in front
Did
of you,
his
Mr. Chairman.
motion get seconded? Did Alistair's motion?
I made a motion.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, you're right. Alistair did make a motion, and I asked him to amend it, and Tom seconded it, didn't he?
Oh, Tom did, okay, I didn't hear it get seconded.
I did.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, I lost my place. There's a motion and a second to grant conditional final approval, subject to
Or
the
no, you
conditions.
seconded it.
Oh, I
Nelson
did
seconded
second
yeah.
it. That's right, before it was amended.
Yeah, I'm just useless here today, and
Okay.
I'm all over the place. Okay, motion by Alistair, and second by Nelson. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 500. So you'll get a letter from the department with kind of the conditions that are laid out, but I hope you take to heart some of the other things that we talked about. Do what you can. I mean, I know you're doing both running the business and kind of got to keep up with what it looks like for your customers as well. So thank you guys for the presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, thank you.
The next item on the agenda is number 6, and it's Devonshire Energy LLC as the applicant, and FMR NH Realty and FMR Merrimack Realty Trust as the owners. It's review for acceptance and consideration of a waiver of full site plan review to construct an approximately 12-acre solar array field. The parcels are located at 1 Spartan Way and 2 Contra Way in the I-2 Industrial and Aquifer Conservation Districts, Tax Map 2C, Lot 113, and Tax Map 3C, Lot 119. Robert, is there anything that we need to know before we hear from the applicant?
No, Mr. Chair, I just let them make their presentation.
Excellent. I've been looking forward to this one as soon as I saw it on the agenda. We have not had an occasion to undertake or consider a ground-mounted solar array like this before, and I think this is going to be interesting.
Well, nice to meet you all. My name is Brian Daigle. I am from Fidelity Investments, and I'll turn it over to my partners here at VHB to give you the technical details of the solar farm. But just want to provide a little context. This solar farm that we're proposing to build here is really part of a multi-year global effort on the part of Fidelity Investments to reduce its overall environmental impact of its operations. I focus on the energy side of the business. We have, in the past 3 or 4 years, we built large solar farms in North Carolina, roughly 7 or 8 times the size of the farm that we're proposing to build here, as an effort to reduce our footprint of our electricity usage. The solar farms in North Carolina represent about 10% renewable energy, so we are able to make the claim that we are 10% renewable energy. The solar farm here on campus, on our Merrimack campus, represents the first significant installation of solar on any of our properties that we own. The ones in North Carolina are actually not on our property, but we own them and lease the land. This solar farm will represent about 2% renewable energy, so it, coupled with the ones in North Carolina, will bring us to about 12%. We have another solar farm that we're planning to build in New England, also in Smithfield, Rhode Island, at our large campus down there, roughly the same size as this campus here. And so we have a sort of a parallel effort going on in New England. But this is going to be the first one in New England, and we're hopeful that it resonates with our employees, our customers, to demonstrate our commitment to sustainability and environmental responsibility. So with that, I will turn it over to Dave here at VHB. Let him.
Hi, good evening. My name is Dave Fenstermacher from VHB, and I'm the project engineer on the site. And I just wanted to just orientate everyone on the site I have up here. I guess you guys can see over my shoulder as well. Yeah. Here's the 554-acre Fidelity lot, and just to orientate yourselves, here's the premium outlets. What we're looking at tonight is what we really wanted to focus on is finding the best space on site to place this solar array. And what we did is we really focused on the southeast corner here, where there's already a cleared area. Historically, it's just been cleared. We think maybe it's an old sand pit, but the area is cleared now. We went out there and we had a wetland scientist go out and update. VHB's on site for the past 20 years, but we went back out there this past spring, confirmed some of the wetland locations, really wanted to nail down the important buffer areas out there. And at the same time, as Brian said, there's a lot of pride on the campus on site. We wanted to make sure that we maintain the continuous woods and walking areas and trails that the Fidelity employees enjoy right now. So just wanted to this shows so this shows the overlay where it's going to be set now. Overall, this is a 3.1 megawatt facility. This area here is about 12 acres. These are pole-mounted arrays. In terms of a impervious impact to the land there, it's really just we have 3 transformer pads and the posts themselves that hold up the arrays. So overall, it's about a 750,000 square foot. Sorry, 750 square foot impact to impervious. The rest is going to be planted with a meadow mix. So where there's trees that are going to be cleared, it's going to be replaced with a meadow mix. And the intent for maintenance is really just to keep that low enough where it doesn't impact the array. So it's going to be a natural native species. It's going to promote pollination down there. So really a great benefit. There's an overhead line that's going to be running north for the interconnect to the Eversource system. The intent is to use this as a temporary construction access, as we don't want the vehicles to be coming off the residential roads, Thornton Road. They'll be coming around the campus. And again, though it's coming around the campus, it's not going to be interfering with the main traffic flow of the campus, so it's going to be coming down here. We have met with the fire department to discuss permanent access, whether it's through Thornton Road for emergency purposes or coming up with a stabilized permanent access for this construction access, maybe a 16-foot wide gravel lot. So in terms of how we're placing the system, the intent is to maintain the existing grades and contours that are out there now. No real changes to stormwater flow. There will be a slight increase in the peak rate of the stormwater because we're changing from a tree cover to the meadow. So we're proposing some infiltration basins and some detention basins to mitigate that flow. This is going to trigger an AOT permit. We've met with DES. They're happy with our design intent, and once we present to you folks and everyone's happy with the layout here, we'll be presenting that to the state. So it'll be in conformance with all the DES stormwater regulations. In terms of municipal impact, there's no traffic associated with this. There's maintenance, the mowing, and maybe once or twice a year they'll get out there or whenever it's needed for emergency access. It's unmanned, so there's no sewer or water needed. It's really just self-sufficient area. They'll be controlling it remotely, monitoring it. We can get into those details if you folks are interested. We have the designer with us. But for the most part, I think that basically covers, we'll be meeting the appropriate setbacks and no variances needed. So just here to present to you and see if you have any further questions.
Sure. No variances, no waivers. I do have lots of questions because I'm intrigued about the project. But
Yes.
first, I think the order of business for the board is to decide whether the application is complete.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we consider this application as complete, enabling us to make an intelligent discussion and deliberation on the matter.
Is there a second for Alistair's motion?
I'll second it.
Second by
Sure.
Nelson. All in favor of determining the application complete, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 500 for it to be complete. Okay, I got questions. Do your solar arrays, are they going to like track the sun, or are they fixed and stationary, or how does that work?
This one will be fixed and stationary. The tracking systems generally are more areas where you don't get snow and ice. So southwest, part of the country, you generally see the tracking systems.
Okay.
So this will be a fixed system, a fixed system on racks that will be at a 20 degree angle aiming to the south. And the racking system will be basically a tubular steel system that will be pinned and screwed into the either granite or the earth. Most likely it's probably going to be granite we're going to run into there. Pin it and screw it into that, and it will be secured. There's plenty of ways to in different parts of the country, you can have pile-driven racking systems, but the geology here doesn't allow for it.
Okay. I see you got a little bit of green space on 3 sides of it, except for the north, and I guess that's to get some trees cleared away from blocking the sun to the panels.
That is correct. That is correct. The shading, because the sun essentially tracks across the southern sky, so all the most of your sun is to the west and east and south, and to the north it's very, very little.
You mentioned early on that this will add 2% to your, I guess, system-wide power.
System-wide renewable energy percentage as a percentage of our overall electricity usage internationally.
What does it do just for this Fidelity site in terms of your power needs?
So this is about 9% energy for our site. The building that we're powering, which is the 2 Contra Way building, it's the building that used to have our data center. It's been sort of migrated out of there. It'll be about 13% of that building usage, but 9% of the site in general.
Well, you guys use a lot of power.
That's why I have a job, right?
Yeah, I guess so. So is there any provision or plans to store energy off the panels, or is it going to be consumed pretty much as fast as it's used?
It'll be consumed as fast as it's used. There have been lots of discussions about energy storage. Energy storage is a very, very hot topic, and it's a game changer in the renewable energy world. Fidelity tends not to be the trailblazer on a lot of technological fronts. So I think we'll sit on the sidelines a little bit and see where the energy storage market goes. Maybe pricing comes down, technology gets better. This could easily be paired with a storage system. There's no plans for that currently, but it could be, most certainly.
Sure. So half of my interest is just curiosity about how these things
Sure.
work, but the other half is that I would imagine the fire department's interested in where a whole bunch of energy storage is going on, even if it's inside your existing building or something that doesn't require new planning board review. I think they'd be interested in knowing when energy storage comes online of that kind of capacity, if it ever does.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think we'd be the first ones concerned about it, because I think that's part of the rub with energy storage is they're talking about whole city blocks of energy storage to help sort of bring the renewable power in line with the demand usage of the grid. And so that is some of the larger problems that urban fire departments are grappling with, is large areas of energy storage. So yeah, we certainly would clear that with the fire department, most certainly on our end.
You mentioned Eversource, but I thought it was just in terms of an access easement. But are you interconnected with Eversource?
We are absolutely interconnected with Eversource, yeah. So we are connecting this to well, it's just to the point where Eversource ends and we begin. So their meter is see, you can circle right there. Their power lines come across the Everett Turnpike right there, and then they enter the ground and go into a duct bank and travel across the campus, across the property into one of our buildings. The meter for that building is actually at that point. So we are going to be connecting this solar farm behind the meter. So it'll be essentially like running a generator on a daily basis
Okay.
that will sort of displace the power that we will need from the grid.
So since it never comes close to being all the power you need, there's no net metering or feedback into
There's
their
not net
system?
metering, that's correct. We
Okay.
won't need net metering here at all.
I don't think it's available on a site like this, but.
The net metering rules in New Hampshire, I think, wouldn't apply. It wouldn't apply here. I think, and if they do, they apply on a small scale. I know they didn't apply to me, so I didn't really get into the details
Sure.
of them. And the reason we are currently in electrical impact study with Eversource, because it's a generating plant, reasonably large generating plant that's on their system. So they have to assess the impact of their system if this thing runs and there's no load at the site, and ultimately this load gets pushed out to the grid. So they're currently undergoing, it's a fairly complicated impact study to ensure that this thing can work well with the existing grid conditions. And there's a lot of safeguards and upgrades that they'll require. So that's a pretty significant hurdle that we have to work with.
You kind of described the poles and the racking system for the array, but physically, how tall is off the ground are panels and?
So the array itself will be a plane. The lowest edge of the plane will be about 3 feet off the ground, and then it will slope up to a height of, I want to say, 8 feet, Paul, 8 feet roughly in height.
Okay.
And that will comprise the multiple rows that will house the panels.
So nowhere near over treetops or anything like
No,
that?
no,
kind of thing?
no.
Reflective surfaces on the panels, do they bounce light off of them that are going to affect any of the neighbors, trees, airplanes
No,
flying by, anything
they
like
don't.
that? What's the surface of the panel?
The surface is a glass-like exterior, so like a hardened glass. I'm probably exceeding my technical capabilities here.
It's glass.
You have to come up here. It's good. I can repeat for you.
You
if
can
want.
talk off that microphone there if you like.
Actually, he can talk. Okay.
You can take that one off the stand and walk around with it too if you want.
Hi, I'm Paul Delmar with Amoresco. So the modules have a glass surface, but they have anti-reflection coating on them.
Okay.
And typically when we're ever near, where there's maybe a potential glare impact, we'll go through an FAA glare impact study. But in this case, we're not near any airports or anything. So there's very minimal glare impact unless you're near somewhere sensitive like an airport. But,
Okay.
and we'll look at that.
So you're not close enough to Manchester's airport for it to be an issue?
No, you have to be like right near it. I mean, you have to be like within the flight path, basically, for that to be an issue. Like I said, there's anti-reflection coating on it, so they're pretty matte, actually.
And the reason why Paul knows that is they install a lot of solar arrays at airports across the country. That's one of their specialties.
We've done a handful, yeah.
Yeah, excellent. I know that you guys have visited our Conservation Commission, last night?
That's last night, yes.
And they had some feedback for you. Have you had a chance to see what the recommendations were? And do you have thoughts on them?
Yeah, they were all pretty consistent with our conversations last night, and overall they were very straightforward, and I think, we're willing to incorporate those into our final site plans.
They've put forward a few that are ones I haven't seen before, in terms of changing your building schedule to avoid nesting season and for training employees to identify certain species
Yeah.
that are at risk.
Yeah. Well, the first one just worked out that through the permitting process, we're going to be after the nesting season anyway, to start construction. And the other one, we are working with Fish and Wildlife anyway to come up with a construction plan. There are a couple of snake species out there that we need to keep an eye on, so there'll be some training and whatever protocol we work out with the state.
Some of the other things that they asked about testing the soils before putting fertilizer and low nitrogen, slow release, those things are usually pretty easy. A lot of those.
Well, our
come up
intent
on a lot
is
of
no
things.
fertilizer.
Yeah, I
And,
was gonna say.
we're using native species, and the
Just so it
intent is
didn't
just to
grow
make
up.
sure if you do fertilize, if it's needed, that we put those notes in.
Yeah, and then that was their other notice, that it's all native species and nothing
Yes.
that's foreign, which are pretty common ones. So, what they've recommended makes me kind of pause as a planning board, because we've pretty frequently imposed a condition of approval that you comply with whatever the Conservation Commission said. And the couple about nesting season and animals,
and taking care of the species of animals sound like excellent goals that are environmentally friendly, but is territory this planning board has not gone before. And I think that I'm glad that you're willing to comply with them voluntarily based on their recommendation. But I think that probably as far as I would go as a planning board was to say that we would recommend or encourage those kinds of steps rather than necessarily. I would need to know more as a planning board from our own policy standpoint before I start throwing out those kinds of requirements for
Right.
folks.
As I said, the nesting one we're okay with because we were starting after the nesting season anyway. So, and the endangered species is going to be dictated by the state anyway. So because of the AOT permit, those come into play.
It would just so happen that we heard from the MPO site across the way earlier, and when they same condition existed on their site, and there was some particular kind of snake,
Hog-nosed snake, Mr. Chairman.
hog-nosed snake,
Yep.
whatever it was, that when they found it, they did what they could to catch them and relocate them, and everybody hoped that it would all work out, but it didn't.
It didn't.
Didn't. Not at all.
I just want to add a comment to that. There's, I think, 6,000 people at this site, Joe, is that roughly? 5,300 people at the site. I would say most of them are very passionate about the site and the natural setting of the site and so forth. Clearly we will do whatever's recommended by the state, by the local municipality. But we also have to sort of answer to the folks that come to work every day too, and if they see us doing something.
No, yeah, absolutely. You've got your own reputation to be.
We have a brand that we have to, that people
sustainable
rely on.
and
Yeah,
conscious.
absolutely. So.
And entering upon this in the sense that you're doing it for renewables and environmental impact and all of that, kind of already puts you in the thought process to say, well, you don't do that with ways that are destructive.
Well, that's correct. It would be counterproductive, and as Dave mentioned earlier, the location of this array really attempted to take advantage of already cleared land that was I think the gentleman at the Conservation Commission last night said it was an old sand pit that was part of the turnpike originally. There was some sand pits, various stages, which was news to me, which made perfect sense. So
it wouldn't surprise me. There's a massive one right across the highway from you guys.
Right, yeah.
Still in operation.
And
anyway, I know that it's kind of, you guys were willing to do what the Conservation Commission had suggested already, but as a planning board, I just thought to mention it because it is new territory for us that I'm not sure we're ready to jump in with both feet. I also know that from some of the comments, the fire department had some thoughts about wanting to have access to your site, and that you guys were having some conversations with them to figure out something that made everybody happy. Have you guys come to something that everybody's happy with?
I don't know if we've come to it completely. I think we're trending in the right direction, and I don't want to for the fire marshal here. I think they wanted to ensure that there was emergency access to the site originally, and so I think that there's a potential to access from the south part of the site off Thornton Road, which is a residential road. It's not our intent to access this site from that location. However, it might be suitable for the fire department to have emergency access to that site. It's a gated site that obviously we could put a key, give them a key, and give them a
Does
lock.
Thornton Road contact your site, or do you guys have easements that lead you to Thornton Road? Or?
No, it comes right at that little point down
This,
to the
this point has frontage.
it's frontage
on
of
okay.
Thornton Road. Yeah.
And this is there's an existing dirt road that goes back up there now.
So we're working with them, and we'll clearly do whatever the fire department needs us to do.
And I think where we end up, the site plan as laid out can accommodate it. So whether we go with a permanent gravel on this temporary access road that we spoke of before, or some permanent gravel inside with some turnarounds, the general layout can accommodate the fire department's.
Okay.
The fire department also had concern about access in the winter, because it wasn't our intent to have equipment out there with hydraulic fluids and so forth plowing this. We usually just let these farms just sit in the snow and let the snow melt. But their concern is about a person going out there to work on the system and having a medical issue, not being able to get to it. So we were willing to, maybe build some operations around, preventing, anyone from going to the site during the winter. And if they were to go to the site, we would either make sure it was plowed and have either a fire watch or some kind of personnel watch there. And we're still working through that. But those are some of the discussions that we've had. They've been great to, very open to discussion. So it's been, I think we're, like I said, I think we're trending in the right direction. You can,
John, you want to add something?
No. We did have a meeting at the fire station last week with all the principals involved, and they very clearly stated what we are looking at. As they said, it's the first one in this area, so we're trying to find out other departments, what they're doing. We're kind of asking other ones. We have asked them to supply some emergency plans from other locations based on access, and also based on, it's essentially a generating station without an off switch, in a sense that those panels are always producing electricity if there's sunlight on them. So that was one of our concerns, if there is an issue in there, what we would be able to do for a brush fire situation, that type of thing. So they are working with us, and they are actively going to be getting us the information we need.
Do your panels have a way to be taken offline, or at least isolated to their 14-acre site and not transferring power off the site?
Yeah, I mean, there's a hard switch, a hard sort of air gap switch at the top of that, at the top of the on a power pole right there. That's a paved road there. Eversource can also take it offline remotely if there's an issue with the grid.
Okay.
So
okay, that makes some sense. I don't mean to dominate all the questions. If others of you guys want to jump in and ask some questions, let me know what you think.
From the solar array over to where you guys are going to hook up with the Eversource?
Yes.
That's all above ground?
it is.
It is?
It is.
And those are going to be on like regular telephone poles?
Power poles, yep.
How far from the highway is that? I can't seem to find
It's,
anything.
well, I mean, it gets closer to the highway with the point of connection. Where the point of connection is, that used to be an old exit ramp that I believe Digital Equipment had when they owned the site. So that used to be an exit ramp off the highway to that site. So where it connects is, it's pretty close to the site.
I think it was between 150 and 200 feet.
Yeah.
And you actually can't see it from the highway because there's a berm along the highway, and it's actually slightly below grade where we are. That was the other intent, is to try to locate this farm where really nobody can see it unless they want to, right? I mean, people are going to be, are going to want tours and going to want to see it, but in the normal daily sort of work flow, it's hidden, and that was our goal.
Right. So this is the width of all the remaining trees that will still be there. So there'll be,
It's in there.
There'll be about 50 feet on site, and then between the right of way and the road, there's still another 100 feet that are there. So there's a pretty significant.
And there's an elevation
buffer.
difference too, so it's lower. It's lower.
Yeah. How tall are your poles?
Poles?
30 feet,
30
roughly.
feet? Okay, so not even close to the tree height.
No.
Is there a reason not to try to bury that power line as it goes from the array to the connection point?
Brian, I can take that. Yeah, I mean, the issue is the ledge, and we're trying to avoid blasting as much as possible. So to trench that a quarter of a mile, we're guaranteed that we're going to hit a ton of ledge. So.
And that was the big concern with the Concom last night, was within the Aquifer Protection District, minimizing or avoiding blasting for that reason. So.
Yeah, we don't love blasting either. and
Plus,
neither
you'd
do our
also,
neighbors.
if you were blasting, you'd have to shut the highway down, probably.
Yeah, the concern was more with the aquifer.
Yeah. Understood. That makes some sense. Okay. Other comments or questions? Neil, did you have others?
No.
Nelson?
And just one observation, first of all, that highway is due to be widened by another lane on each side, just for reference. But the question I had to do with, there seems to be on some of these plans shown what looks like a gravel road or something that sort of goes all around the periphery of this site, the whole site. Is that a true interpretation, or is that just in this area?
Yeah, those are existing access points for the site now. There's a would you call those, landscape roads or maintenance roads that come?
You mean as part of the new plan, or?
Those are all
No,
existing.
part of the
They're all
existing.
existing.
Yeah.
They look like they're existing.
They
but
are.
it doesn't-
Yeah,
isn't
we
clear.
have a lot of hiking trails that are
Yeah.
that are more than just. I mean, they're wide enough to get a truck down.
Yeah.
But they're dirt trails that weave throughout the campus.
So, yeah, so the only new roads would be the connection from that dirt road that's out there now to the gate, and then the access
Is that one? Yeah.
to the interconnect.
Okay.
And then the access to the interconnect it's our goal, and this is part of the discussion we have with the fire department. It was our original intent, and hopefully it still can be that way. Is to have that a compacted gravel road, stable enough for construction traffic, so we can route the construction traffic
Sure.
north-south to the site.
Yeah.
And then when we're done, we're going to loam and seed it and just let it grow and keep it a
Mhm.
impervious surface, and that's
Yeah.
the goal there.
Okay. The whole thing's surrounded by a chain link fence, I noticed, and that'll be
It's
secured.
per
I take it.
NEC National Electrical Code standards.
Yeah. Okay.
7 foot high
7
chain
foot high.
link.
And the fire department would have a
Yeah.
key.
With a 500-plus acre campus, is there any point in the future where you might come back and add more solar panels?
Probably not here. Probably not here. There's a fair amount of wetlands there too, so we had to avoid the wetlands so as much as we could. So,
Did you give any thought to putting them on the roof of the buildings?
we did, and we have put them on the roof of buildings.
Yeah.
The challenge with the roof is to get the scale, right? If you see the size. If you see the size of the solar array, and then look at one of our buildings here, right there, the scale is tough to work. I mean, it's great for optics and it's great to do, but we've just had when you're talking about the large scale that we're discussing, I just personally feel more comfortable with the ground-mounted system because you have roof equipment, you have roof penetrations, you have roof integrity to worry about. So you open up a whole other set of issues with roof-mounted systems, and they're great. I mean, you see them all over, and lots of entities have made the commitment to roof-mounted systems. We just believe that we could move the renewable energy needle more significantly by doing a ground-mounted system here. And that's really the goal.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to know.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. Can you tell me a little bit more about the solar array itself, the distance between the rows, and if there's a distance between the units? What are you doing, or how can you convince us that you're not creating a lot of impervious area? Not that I think you are, I just want you to describe it a little bit better for people that are paying attention.
So the distance between, Paul, help me with the distance between the rows.
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's probably somewhere between 15 to 20 feet based on the tilt and the height of the racks. We try to limit the row-to-row shading, and so these are about 5 meters along the plane, so my guess is they're about 9 meters row-to-row spacing, so we're probably looking at like 12 feet at least between the rows, minimum. So you can easily get a truck through there.
9 meters is more like 18 to 20 feet, right?
That's the front edge to the front edge. So looking at the in-between is probably about 12 feet. But I'm just trying to pull that off the top of my head. I don't know exactly, but
And
I can
underneath
get
the array is the metal lawn mix as well?
It's the metal lawn mix, and so it's hard to see from the drawing, but like one array is made up of five panels essentially, and they're strung together, right?
Mhm.
So
Right, is there a gap between them?
there's a gap between them.
There's a 6-inch gap between each 5x5 table, and between each module within the 5x5 table is roughly a 1/4 inch gap between each module.
Quarter to a half.
And the
So
front
water-
edge of the
water
rack
does
is about
drip
3
through.
feet.
Drips through the whole thing, so the grass will get watered underneath.
Yes.
There will be some.
Yeah, and I mean it doesn't grow as well as grass.
No,
exposed
because
to
it
the
doesn't get any
sunlight.
sun. You take all the sun away from it.
Right,
But anyway.
right. So, but it grows enough, and if we keep the 3-foot clearance, we have a landscape architect within Fidelity who's the sort of gatekeeper of all things environmental, and he was insistent on the pollinator mix in the 3-foot height to ensure that we could get some bee pollination habitat going below it. but the water doesn't necessarily, it's not like a roof surface where the water will collect and cascade off the entire plane and then drip at the edge. It'll fall through the cracks, and so.
Now, as you're coming down the slope, panel to panel, is there a break there as well, or is
There
that
is,
solid?
yeah. Again, about 1/4 of an inch.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, when I was talking I was at the regional. What was the name of that?
NRPC general discussion meeting.
Whatever, the OIT spring
Oh,
zoning
the
and planning
Office
meeting.
of Energy and Planning, yes.
They had a big
Oh,
thing on solar arrays, and they were talking about potentially putting drip lines to try and avoid erosion at the base of the slope and stuff like that. I don't know if you need to consider that.
Well,
or-
and so that's the discussion we're having with the Department of Environmental Services at the state level.
Okay.
It is a detail that they have shown us. It's basically a 12 by 12 channel filled with crushed stone at the along the length of the row that will sit below the leading edge.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great detail. I've just never seen it on any solar farm, and neither have these folks. So I think I think that detail was. I asked them this is a pretty neat looking detail. Where'd you get it? And he said, well, it was from the National Society of Hydrology Engineers and Scientists, and it was it's the first time I've ever seen a detail like that. I've just never seen it in practice. And in reality, you can see there's a fairly large array in Moultonborough, New Hampshire. This will be slightly larger than that one that I was at last week, and it's still somewhat sandy in between, so the grass hasn't quite grown, and you could actually see the drip pattern like underneath the rack too. So you have the drip edge, and I actually have a photo of it I could show. It's on my iPad out in my car, but I'd be glad to forward it to the group.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I'm fascinated by the whole thing. I know that there are people in the state working on a template zoning ordinance for solar arrays, which they were presenting at this conference. And they talked about all those kinds of details as things to consider, not necessarily to be restrictive or anything, but just
yeah, I mean,
just
I
to
think
understand what you're dealing with.
I think it's a nice detail. I'm just not certain it would serve the function that was intended. I don't think it would.
To avoid erosions, to try and control.
And I think I think that in general is a great cause. I'm just not sure it would serve the intent, its intent, because the water does fall in between the panels, and you get, it's the level of water you're going to get at the leading edge is probably going to be significantly diminished the time it gets there. So.
Okay. Your intent is to be able to mow the grass?
We will mow the grass as minimally as possible.
As necessary.
As necessary. And generally, I mean, you have to think about it. We'll have to mow it to prevent saplings from growing, right? So you don't want to be out there with chainsaws. So we'll have to mow it probably at least once a season. And then generally we will mow it to prevent performance. So if weeds and things grow and prevent shadows or cast shadows, we'll mow to do that. But I mean that's what we do. Our sites in North Carolina, we own 4 of them. They're roughly 60 acres apiece, so they're massive sites. And I have some photos I can share with you. Again, I don't have them here, but we just let the grass grow. The grass just grows, and they mow it once a season, and that's it. It's not really made for sort of picnicking and that kind of stuff.
It's not a ball field.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So,
in your plot here on the southeast corner where it's close to the highway, there's some other detail next to the tree line edge. I was wondering if you could help me understand what that is in that area where it's narrowest between your space and the highway, the southeast.
Down here?
Yeah.
That's just existing contours.
Well, there's up right underneath where your hand is, and down below it, there. If you zoom in, there's some extra detail of some sort that might be a fence.
Erosion control.
Pardon?
That's our erosion control.
Erosion control.
The filtration socks.
Okay, and there's no intent to put any fencing or site barriers or anything. The tree line and whatnot is considered sufficient.
Really for erosion control measures.
The Conservation Commission had questions about silt socks as well in their comments, now that you mention it. And
Yeah, they just wanted to confirm that, so basically you put the socks out and when you're done you rip them up and rake them out to make sure there's native, appropriate compost in
Okay, or
the
fully
silt sock.
composted. Okay.
Yeah, so we'll update our detail to specify that. That makes
Understood,
sense.
that makes sense.
You don't want to bring invasive species in from the mulch that you're getting from somewhere else.
Yep. I know the folks that have rooftop solar say that the snow really isn't a problem at all. It kind of sheds right off of them with the planes of the roof, but those may be a little bit more inclined than what you have here. But will you get snow accumulating if you're 3 feet off the ground on your low edge?
We will. I mean, the snow, I mean, if you get a bad winter like 2015, or, even last year, we had a fair amount of snow, you'll get snow and it'll shade. But it melts pretty quickly. It's a dark surface, so the sun comes out and, the sun's pretty warm. I mean, the sun's pretty strong. You can actually generate electricity with it, I hear. But it really does. You'd be surprised how quickly it melts unless it's completely just caked in and covered. But we've had some pretty good luck with it. So we won't be clearing them, if that's what you're asking. Or,
Yeah. But there's no damage to them if they just produce a little less because of some snow blocking them. It is what it is.
That is correct, yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Go ahead, Tom.
Additionally, you have on your detail page something about the inverter and whatnot. How frequently do you have inverters? Are they involved every 5 panels, or? I mean, you've got 3 poles and transformers, but.
So these inverters are 60 kilowatts, and so that would roughly be, trying to take it off the top, that'd be 12 strings of 18 modules that are connected in series. I can't do that in my head, but. So
Okay,
yeah, so
but
there's
every
roughly
row,
40 60 kilowatt inverters on this site, and they're spread throughout the array. We try to align them as close to the access road that goes through the middle as much as you can without having a really long circuit to minimize voltage drop. So yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at here. We like to have this kind of distributed inverter rather than like a central inverter. So if like one goes down, you don't have to rush out to the site if you're only 60 kilowatts down rather than 1 megawatt worth.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our design approach, is to have smaller inverters that are kind of distributed throughout the array.
And what's your life expectancy? You've got some experience with these.
So the modules themselves are warranty for 25 years typically. The inverters are usually a base of 10 years. And so often we'll carry in our costing a replacement at 10 years, or we carry some spares. And the racking is usually warranted for 20 years as well. It's not a lot of moving parts on these. Really, it's the electronics and the inverters that are the things that will go first. But the modules themselves are robust. I mean, the silicon modules have been around since the 50s, and there's a lot of reliability data on them. And we're comfortable with the 25-year lifespan on them.
And you don't need any storage out here for spare parts or any of that kind of stuff? Everything would be kept back
No,
in the
so
facility?
we'll be doing the operations and maintenance on this as well, and so we have spares in our shop, but we usually don't carry a lot, actually. And the inverter company that we work with, Selectry, is based out of Lawrence, Mass. So we have really good service with them, and they have a stock room there as well. So if we have to change a board out or anything like that, it's usually a pretty quick turnaround. So we like working with the local folks.
Okay. I'm just trying to get a feel. You were talking earlier about very infrequently going out there and having to clear the snow if somebody is going to go out there, and I'm just trying to get a better idea of what might call somebody out there.
I'd say for just to follow up on that, the operations themselves, we have an annual preventative maintenance where we go and check everything, like do a really detailed sweep. I'd say in the beginning startup stages, we're there a little more frequently, right? We're trying to get everything working like in the first month or two. But then after that, I mean, we rarely have to go out to the site to fix anything. And if it is, it's maybe a quick inverter swap or something like that. But
You don't have pest problems, wasps building nests, or squirrels
usually we catch
chewing
that
wires,
we either catch that during the mowing or the preventative maintenance. When we send our guys out to mow, which is usually once, maybe twice a year, we have them keep an eye out for that, but,
As long as they're not shading, we'll generally leave them alone. too.
yeah, we,
Yes.
it's true, as long as they're not like building like in the conduit or like in the inverter, like housing.
Right, that's-
If they're on the backside of a rack or something, we'll just leave it
Who
as.
cares? Yes, no, I understand that.
They go
I just-
away.
I can envision them getting into your inverters and conduits and the squirrels
We've
eating
seen
the
we've
wires
seen
and all
a
those
lot
kind
of
of
things,
things.
yeah.
Yeah. We've
But
got
you don't
some-
have any particular cooling or any other moving parts,
Nope.
right? So you don't have to worry about.
The only cooling
filling
would
up
be
an
the
area.
fans that are in the inverters themselves, but yeah, other than that, there's no moving parts.
Okay. Sounds cool.
We'll
Thanks.
be glad to take you, anyone who wants to see you on a tour when, if
Sign me up.
Definitely.
I want
Oh,
to.
absolutely.
Have to, yeah.
I wanna
I'd want to
go.
go. I
Yes.
think that'd be interesting to see. Yeah.
I'd love to.
We could
So-
schedule a site walk or something after the
Um,
fact.
This may be kind of a dumb question, but there's no content, there's no heavy metal content or rare earth elements that could nickel, anything that's going to be leaching out of these panels, coolant, liquids, oils.
No, all the solder is like environmentally friendly. That's like within the modules, and then any conduit would just be aluminum or typical rigid metal.
I
If you
mean,
go
I was-
underground, it's PVC. We don't know how much we're going to be able to actually trench here, but there should be no rare earth materials at all on the site.
I didn't expect there would be. I didn't think that I'd be the first one to think of that if you've got 60 acres of them all over the
Well, they used to
Carolinas.
use lead solder, but since then the industry has gone away from that. So.
Is that right?
Well, I mean, again, this will be, it's a sensitive project for us because it's the first one on our property. The ones in North Carolina are not located near Fidelity sites, so there's a lot of, in addition to your eyes, there's a lot of eyes internally on this project, so we're,
Yeah. I think as a planning board, from a policy standpoint, we wonder when there will be a project that's intended to use solar as and power generation as the primary use of the site, and exporting the power off the site to whatever the grid.
To that end, Mr. Chairman, you may not have had the chance to learn that our worthy governor has vetoed those sort of things as being enforced upon us. He's not prepared to give special credits to these things for power generation in this state today.
yeah, it's not actually, that's correct. This is not actually a renewable energy friendly state level. But that's okay. That's okay.
Noticed that too. Okay. Are there other questions or discussion by members of the board?
Let's let this happen.
Are there any abutters or citizens who wish to weigh in? Seeing none?
Actually, I do have one question, sorry.
Close the public hearing. Go to Neil.
Sorry for that. The stands that you're putting them on, are they concrete, metal?
No, they're aluminum or I think they're steel based actually.
So they don't have any coating like paint or anything like that on them?
No, they shouldn't. I don't believe they would be galvanized. I can check on that. I don't know that off the top of my
Yeah, I
head.
was just curious. So they're not they don't have any potential for corrosion and paint falling off and getting
No,
into
no,
the
No,
ground
no,
or
no.
They
anything
use, they
like
use
that?
something, it's a system called TerraSmart that they use. It's a pretty prominent company that makes, I mean, there's a lot of companies make these racking systems. And this type of system here is that sort of tubular steel that would actually pinned right into the granite, into the earth.
It's a helical ground screw, so
Right.
it's literally screwed into the granite
So-
rather than pile driven.
So, and they, I mean, it's not a coated, it's not a coated steel,
Right.
but it's definitely corrosion resistant for sure, whatever
Yeah.
you do to it.
Right on. Okay. That's all. Thank
Other
you.
comments or questions?
There's not any appreciable noise, hum, or anything like that that's going to come off of this, or?
No, I mean the only noise that you would hear audible would be maybe the fans and inverters, but you'd have to be standing really close to them. And then the transformers may have a little bit of audible noise. And again, the decibel rating is so low that you'd have to be standing right next to it.
But it's well inside your property, so
We've
nobody's
had to do
gonna be-
studies before when we were next to a.
I would have thought the noise from the turnpike would.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good point.
I mean, it will, but the inverters make noise. There's a buzz to them. I mean, when you stand close to them, it's an electrical. When they're active, you can hear it buzz, but it's you walk 15 feet away and it just dies right down. And the ones
I'm
we-
just trying, I'm looking for any reason that a neighbor might not
Sure.
be appreciative of having it down in that corner of your property. And,
I'm just trying to figure out what the questions are to ask, since this is the first time we've seen one of these.
But you told us it's out of sight unless you go there. You've got it fenced, so it won't be a nuisance as far as the encouragement for young boys like myself to go check out.
Although you're
Um,
welcome to. You're welcome to it. Just give us a call and you're welcome to come
With your
anytime you'd like.
permission, I could, but I can think of a lot of guys, 15 or so, that might want to go there anyway. But
Yeah, they're already there.
yeah, that's probably true too.
Do you have people that come on your site to hunt or ride motorcycles or any other kinds of things without
They're not
permission?
supposed to, but they do. I mean, they're you know, there's tracks. You see people, you see mountain bike tracks. I don't know if you see ATV tracks. So generally, we can get them, keep them, but there's no hunting allowed, certainly. And I mean, there's no. There's quite a bit of wildlife. You know, deer. There's a lot of activity. A lot of active
Oh, I'm
deer
sure.
activity.
That many
throughout
acres.
there. A lot of ticks. A lot of deer.
That's that, okay.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any comments or questions? So we've accepted it as complete. The applicant hasn't had any waivers, so we don't have to deal with that. The public, we had a public hearing with gaveling it open and
Thank-
closed with no comments.
Bob, it's actually a waiver of full site plan.
Waiver of full site plan review? Okay. So the applicant is requesting waiver of full site plan review. What's the will of the board with respect to that request?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we grant the applicant's request for a waiver of full site plan review on the specific circumstances relative to the subdivision, indicate the waiver will carry out the spirit and intent of the regulations.
Well, accept that if you call it a site plan instead of a subdivision.
Did I? Oh.
Well, the thing says subdivision or conditions of the land, but
Yeah.
Okay. Nelson, you had your hand up.
I was going to second with
Okay.
the condition that you change it to a site plan.
All right.
There's no subdivision involved here.
Well, it does say subdivision in the regs, that's why I quoted the regs.
There's actually two different ones, one for
Oh, I missed
subdivision,
it, I
one
missed
for
it.
site. But anyway, we're fine.
All right.
All in favor of waiving full site plan review, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining? 500 for that. Does the board have any more discussion for the applicant, or are you ready to take final action?
Go.
What's
Mr.
the
Chairman,
will?
I make a motion, we grant final approval to this project based on everything we've heard tonight and the memo produced by Mr. Robert Price dated June 14th, 2018. And the conditions that apply, and obviously the particular one we want to be sure is that whatever discussions you have with the fire department are resolved to everybody's satisfaction, particularly theirs, because it's their problem in a way if anything goes wrong.
So before looking for a second, the only thing that I would ask you to consider adding is that the applicant acknowledge if they ever do energy storage on site, that they come back and report to us about that. so
Well,
it's
that
known.
was in the meeting indicated, but I'd be happy to have that added, Mr. Chairman.
So
Absolutely.
thank you for that. Is there a second for Alistair's motion? Let's get 2 seconds over here. We'll go with Neil. You can
Sorry, I
make a
didn't
second.
see that.
Go for your,
That's okay.
I'll
We'll
second that.
We'll count Neil Anketel as the second. If there's no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining? 500. I'm excited about this. I think this
So
is
am
cool.
I.
I want to see it built and I want to go tour it. I think this is.
Maybe, of course, the applicant would like to provide us with a site visit in South Carolina, which is expensive.
Yeah.
North Carolina.
North Carolina.
North Carolina.
I thought of that. I asked.
They're out in the middle of nowhere. It's a beautiful drive, but it's a long drive. I can tell you that
missed
much.
the part where he was asking you to pay for it.
Yeah, right.
There's none so deaf as those who don't want to hear.
Oh, that's right. It could. Yeah, we do have a video. You know what? I'll have to.
Anyway, thank
So
you.
those kinds of
Probably on
things
your
like the
iPad.
videos or some of those pictures or things like that, I know that we're kind of through with our review, but you mentioned that you had them.
I do, yeah.
If you provide them to the department, sometimes we're able to put some of those things online for the public to be able to take a look at and see and understand. Not that there's something more that we would hear from the public once we've already voted on a thing, but I think there's more than just the 5 of us that are curious about what it is to have a big ground-mounted display. So if you choose to send those, I think.
Yeah,
that'd be appreciated.
I think we can share the video of our own solar farms in North Carolina. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's in North Carolina, so there is that sort of difference. I have some photos of the solar farm in Molten Borough. I'd rather not probably share it with you since it's not our farm.
And they also do have them at Exeter High School, and its access road has got a very large solar farm. Well, not very large by your size,
Yeah.
but it has a good-sized solar farm in there, which the school uses.
So is this 14 acres going to be for New Hampshire size big or the biggest?
This will be the largest one from a megawatt, from an output perspective. The one
In
in
New
Molten
Hampshire.
Borough is 2.6 megawatts DC, and
Yeah,
this will
that's
be,
right.
this will be 3 megawatts DC, 3.1.
Till the next one comes along.
So it'll be the largest, yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much
Well,
for the
you're quite welcome.
presentation.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank you
your
guys
time.
for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 7 on our agenda is John Flatley Company as the applicant and John Flatley as the owner. Review for acceptance and consideration of final approval of a 2-lot subdivision. The parcel is located at 645 Daniel Webster Highway in the I-1 Industrial and Aquifer Conservation Districts and Wellhead Protection Area, Tax Map 6E3, Lot 1. Robert, is there anything that we need to know before we hear from the applicant?
No, Mr. Chair.
Sir, could I make a suggestion? Bring it over here because the TV cameras can see it better.
Perfect.
Excuse me. Thank you. It's just for the TV, the benefit of the citizens.
Take all the time you need to get settled in, and then when you're ready to begin.
Chairman, members of the board. You need the mic.
Yeah, you got to have a microphone with you. But thank you for the start. You can take it anywhere you want.
Thank you. My name is Mike Plouffe. I'm a land surveyor with Fieldstone Land Consultants. Here tonight to represent John Flatley, who is the owner of tax map lot 6E3-1, which is located at 645 Daniel Webster Highway. Purpose of this application is to subdivide 6E3-1 into 2 lots. The total area of the existing lot is 73.6 acres. I have it highlighted here, outlined in blue on the existing conditions plan. And I just highlighted in orange the limit of the new line that will be subdividing the lot. Zoning for the parcel is Industrial 1, or I-1 district. The zone has no minimum requirements for area, frontage, width, or depth. The minimum building setbacks are 50 feet front, 20 feet side, and 30 feet rear. A conditional use permit for a mixed-use development of this site received final approval from this board on September 1st in 2015. The proposed use, building setbacks, open space, project phasing are all per the approved conditional use permit. New lot 6E37, which is shown right here. This is the southern portion of the lot that we were just looking at on the first page. Will contain 31.2 acres with 355 feet of frontage along Daniel Webster Highway. A multifamily residential development was approved in May of 2017, consisting of 5 48-unit apartment buildings with a clubhouse on this area of this lot. I have a sketch of that as well afterwards I can show you. What I'm showing now is the northern new lot, which contains the remainder of 6E31. It will contain 42.3 acres, and it will also have 1,207 feet of frontage along Daniel Webster Highway. The CUP depicts this lot as retail space, and a site plan will be required for future development. This is actually the master site development plan, which was approved through the CUP. It's just kind of turned sideways, but what you saw before was this line right here. This is the 5 48-unit multifamily development, which was approved already. This is the other lot, the remainder lot right here, which for the conditional use permit shows a proposed retail space, but that will require a site plan eventually. I believe the memo, there was a memo that which had a question about the driveway entrance. There has been an approved driveway entrance from NHDOT right in that location right there. The permit number was 05-297-0015. And the other comment, I believe, was if there was going to be access to Allen Road. And the answer to that is no, there's not going to be any access to Allen Road. So with that, certainly welcome any questions that you might have.
Thank you for your presentation. As you went through that, I'm reminded that my firm has done some work for the Flatleys, and so I'm going to recuse myself and turn the reins over to our vice chair.
Thank you very much indeed. The two things that I pick up on, I'm glad to hear you're not going into the residential development. I think it's Allen Road, so you've given that up completely. There's not going to be an access through Allen Road.
There is not.
Secondly, you do understand the conditions for the development of the residential area, that you cannot build the 5th unit until there's some improvements on the CUP side.
Correct.
That's known. And the third question I've got is the access road is now obviously in the residential part of the property. May I assume you're not going to construct another access road in for the other parcel?
With the current use, conditional use permit, there was another access which was proposed, which is right here.
But that's is that the existing road that feeds Saint-Gobain, or is that a new one?
No, that's a new one. The Saint-Gobain is actually down.
All right,
down
okay.
further.
I just wanted to have it clarified. Thank you. I'll throw it open to my colleagues. Has anybody got any comments?
I just wanted to be sure that all of the legal conditions that were consistent with the original CUP apply to both of these lots, and that they are still tied into each other in accordance with the agreements of the CUP.
Yes, that is true, and they were also tied in with the site plan that was done for this right here, and it will certainly be tied in with any future development of this lot.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Which was really the purpose of my comment about not building the 5th unit because they've got it's all tied
That's
in.
one piece of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tom?
Can you give me some background? Why are we doing this?
The reason for the subdivision, I believe, is financing. Rather than, I guess, burden the entire lot, if there was 2 lots, then financing for this would be separate from this one right here.
It's frequently done with big sites like this for the purpose of financing.
Yeah, I always wonder why you don't do it up front, though, and why you come back afterwards and
Well,
spend time and energy. I guess what concerns me is that we're going to get these residentials developed, and then somebody's going to come back and say, well, we can't find anybody to move into the retail portion, and so we're just not going to do that. And by the way, we'd like to build more residential in there, as has been done in other parts of town.
You're quite right.
And so as soon as you start breaking it up and compartmentalizing it and everything, it just looks to me like, we're laying the groundwork to go there. And I'm very frustrated by that kind of effort when we go to all the trouble to talk about a CUP, and then it looks like, whether it is or not, it looks like it's groundwork's being laid to just separate it all out and say, well, we're not going to do that because it's not economical or it's not beneficial or something like that. So I'm skeptical whenever I see this, although I agree it happens.
And of course, one has to
accept it.
recognize that, I was thinking one area where it happened, which was that place on further back on the Route 3, where we actually had offices, and we've now had to allow them convert it into accommodation. And it is getting harder, I would appear, for people to build things with so much people buying so much stuff on the internet. Anyway, but we will make sure that the original conditions attached to the original approval are maintained, or if they're not, you're going to have to come in with incredibly good reason why not. All right, anybody want anything else? Presumably we ought to have a request that this matter is complete. Could I have a motion to that effect?
Okay, I will, okay. Well, I would like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman,
I would be delighted for you
to
to
accept
make-
this plan as complete.
I'll second that.
All right. Motion approved, proposed by Nelson Disco, seconded by Neil. Anybody have any comments? Otherwise, I'll take a vote. All in favour, say yes.
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 All right. Do we? No waivers requested. As a matter of courtesy, we should throw the matter open to the general public, which looks like you, Mr. Manueli. Are you wishing to comment on anything?
Honestly, as a citizen of the town, I think that your conditions that you're proposing are excellent.
Thank you.
Having lived here over 20 years and seen some projects that have gone in that direction, I think that's a fantastic condition to put on this.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your vote of confidence. I think we all appreciate that. Is there anybody who would like to make a final motion then? Mr. Disco.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve this subdivision as presented, bearing in mind the conditions that I expressed earlier in my desire to have the applicant be assured that the conditions that applied to the original CUP apply to both of these parcels of property now.
That seems perfect to me.
I second that.
Thank you very much, Neil.
And all of the conditions in the memo from staff?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Including,
yes.
obviously, the memo from Kelly Chamel dated June 12th, 2018.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much indeed. I'll call the question then. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody against? Nobody. So it's 4-0. And thank you very much for your proposal. You'll get the necessary paperwork from our Community Development Office.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. So I will now pass the chair back to the chair because he can deal with the minutes and any other matters. We've got some other matters as well after the minutes. I think.
Thank you, Alistair. Thank you for jumping in there and taking care of that one. Item 8 on our agenda is discussion and possible action regarding other items of concern. Does anyone have any other items of concern they'd like to discuss? Robert?
Yes, I do. All right, so in front of you, each of you should have received this 11 by 17 paper plan with memo attached. This is the proposed site plan that is going to be submitted by Chris Ross for the Synergy storage site. The applicant has requested that we submit this to the board with the memo attached so you could quickly kind of go through it and determine or offer me some feedback to provide to them before they formally submit if this is going on the right path of what the board wanted to see. This plan does not have any landscaping, lighting, or things to that effect because none of that is changing from what was already approved, but it does show fixes to all of the issues with the encroachments of parking spaces and the formerly called access road, which is now just going to be just the extra area showing for storage of vehicles and for the U-Haul type business he's got going there.
Thank you for that, Robert. I'm going through in my mind what some of the issues were, and on the first 11 by 17, the parking area towards the northern part of the lot to the rear, where cars park when they're not supposed to, there's a proposal to put some no parking signs. I think that's a good step. Perhaps some pavement striping there too would make me happy. I think that the handful of parking spaces in the back that are over the boundary line, removing those is the right choice, and converting those to 4 parallel parking spaces is the right choice. I'm happy with that, personally. I think the choice to call the vehicle storage area instead of a emergency access lane offers the applicant some freedom in how it's designed and removes some constraints about the width and the location of the telephone pole. I think that's a good choice. So in my mind, that's 3, but I remember there was 4 or 5 total issues involved with this one. Robert, are there some others that I'm overlooking that are part of the change here?
That's really the main part of it. There was a couple others that dealt with some parking reconfiguration up where the two lots kind of come together, but that we kind of just lumped it in as they're not necessarily issues, negative issues. It's just a matter of, oh, by the way, this happens, so when this plan gets approved, they'll be formally blessed.
Okay, yeah, so those are a little laid out differently. I don't have any objection to those things personally. So that's my 2 cents in terms of feedback is in those parking spaces along that northern edge in the I-1 zone in the back, pavement striping in addition to the no parking signs to say no parking there.
Were there some drainage issues across that that vehicular parking space as well?
Yes.
From the neighbors?
Yes, and I don't know what the current status of those things are, whether those are worked out. I know that we did have a chance to have site plan review for the neighboring site, and that kind of brought to the surface a bunch of issues, and I think that the applicants had kind of the 2 applicants were satisfied with each other, but I don't know whether either one of them was satisfied with the drainage science. And Robert, have they gotten that worked out?
The original plan that they came back here with, was it March or April, whatever it was, did show some kind of swale improvements or something on the Greenwood lot, but I don't see that here. I don't really know what the status of that is at this point.
Well, I would say, Mr. Chairman, that we should certainly want to see what they are, because I remember Chris Ross's crying presentation of the water, and he was blaming it all on SRS Petroleum, and it seems to me that it was as much as he created it by taking away the sort of drainage swales and stuff that was there to put these car spaces in. So I would hope that we're going to get, as part of his presentation on July 17th, some indication of drainage and things. And
I agree with that, although my opinion is, I know that when he drew them on the Greenwood lot, the question came up with, have you made arrangements with the Greenwoods to make that construction on their property? And there was some question about how difficult that might be, or whether you're going to be able to pin that down. I don't necessarily, I'm not married to whatever the previous design was, but somebody's got to engineer the drainage on this bit and get it through peer review and make the world happy on that, whatever that may be. And that's all the opinion that I have in terms of what the solution should be. It needs one.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, does that make sense to everyone?
I also noticed...
we're being put on the spot here to review a plan that isn't on our agenda.
Oh, we're not reviewing it.
Well, we're not reviewing it. He's just asking for some general feedback.
Just general feedback. Well, in general feedback, I'd agree with what you said, that there's a lot missing here as far as how they're handling the drainage and how they're doing that. I don't see the telephone pole in the middle of the pavement.
It's still there. If you look, there's a thing, it says EOP, and I believe which I guess stands for edge of parking, and I would like to bet that telephone pole is still there.
Yeah.
But I don't see it shown on the plan.
Yeah, it is still in existence. It's not shown on the plan, but because of the fact that this thing is no longer considered a formal emergency access road, it's no longer necessarily a detail that they cared to call out, because we're not using it for anything other than just storage of vehicles.
So I agree with half of that logic and not the other half. I know that we're not going to measure the telephone pole for access roads or any of that kind of stuff, but it's a structure on the site. Put it on the plan.
The other thing was, I wasn't sure that where it says 4 parking spaces, I think I understood what you were saying there, that we're taking 7 spaces and reducing them to 4.
That's correct.
And the 4 will be parallel.
Right.
And the pavement will be removed. Okay. I understand that. But in reality, the pavement, the parking, it says proposed no parking spots. Okay, that's new, because he's parking now.
Yes,
all the way
correct,
down.
all the way down.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've raised that with him each time, and
yes,
and I don't know that I've checked in the last few days, but every time that I have passed by there and looked, there's cars parked there. And,
There were cars there
They
this
were
morning.
certainly there on Monday.
and Chris has expressed some difficulty, some recognition that it's difficult to control what others do, and that's why I wanted the pavement painting in addition to just some signs.
Yeah.
No parking, stripe, hashed, something.
And remove the pavement that's in the other person's
Yeah.
property. Yeah.
And the reason you don't want people parking there,
The width of that is what's designated by the fire department as necessary for their equipment without cars there. When there are cars there, there's not the width that they need.
because people are going to park there. You can put all the signs and paint you want. People are going to park there. I've parked there. I'm sure others will too.
I don't know. I mean, I don't park in front of Shaw's where the diagonal lines are that say fire lane.
No, I don't park in front of Shaw's. You're right.
You park there until you get your car towed away. I don't have any other feedback to offer. I appreciate Chris's efforts to gain feedback this way. I don't particularly like having it kind of, here's a handful of minutes to take a look. But I do know that he has had some long history with this, and there's some benefit to giving some feedback so that when he does come before us with a plan, it's better. But I don't want to make a habit out of considering plans this way.
Good, thank you.
Other comments or questions? Does that give you all you need, Robert?
Just one more comment. Where he puts his U-Haul trucks in between him and the Bracci Liberts lot, is there any concern with that?
So I was a little confused by that as it came forward in the realm of this compliance situation, because I remembered, my memory was when we approved it, that the parking spaces along that side of the building were against the building, and that they ended up being across the pavement on the other side, and then there's some exterior doors on the building on that side which were not in my memory of the original plan, and there was some reasoning behind that. What's that?
There's just the one up by where the hydraulic gate is.
I think that there's some actual overhead doors down on that lower section to, like, storage unit doors, like
Yeah,
rent
could be, I
that
don't-
unit with an exterior door.
Yeah.
I thought it was a change from what was originally proposed or approved by us, but I also thought about it and said, well, you know, would I have said no to that if you proposed it the first time? Now, using them for U-Haul spaces instead of parking spaces is a different question, but the need for parking for self-storage is so extraordinarily low that
Yeah.
the spaces are there and available, and it doesn't take away from what he needs to run his business. So that wasn't a particular issue. I understand that the planning and zoning administrator's determination is that U-Hauls are kind of an accessory use of self-storage, and therefore it kind of comes along with it without us considering approving it. Robert, did I get that bit right?
Yeah, I think that was Jillian who called that up, but yeah, it sounds right to me.
I think that when we get to see a plan before us, whatever's going on with those spaces ought to be either addressed and changed or approved as is or something, so that there's not another layer of questions about whether it's what was approved or not, whatever it is. I'm sorry I can't give you a more definitive final answer on what I think of those spaces, Tom, but that's the best I can pull out of the memory bank.
That's fine. I just thought we ought to mention that they were there and see if anybody had a comment.
Anyone else have any comments on that particular question
Not
or
on that
issue?
issue, no.
Other comments or questions at all for him? Okay, so let's put put that bit away. Are there any other discussion or other items of concern?
Well, you did say, Mr. Chairman, you were going to give a very quick insight to the
Yes.
Roundtable Planning Board's meeting.
Yes, the Nashua Regional Planning Commission, a week or so ago. Has it been just a week or 2 weeks?
The 11th, Mr. Chairman.
The 11th.
I think.
It was a Monday.
It was the 11th, I think.
Yeah.
The 11th,
Yeah,
so
it
a
was.
week and a day.
Week and a day.
Hosted a forum for planning board members from the member communities within the National Regional Planning Commission. And there's a kind of a wide variety. It includes Bedford, and it also includes some small towns like Mason, and a whole bunch of different varieties of approaches to dealing with planning and zoning.
Bedford was included,
Bedford was there.
because they're not in the Nashua Regional Planning. Those-
Fellow was there talking about the
No,
Bedford
but they were,
development.
they're certainly in our region.
Yeah.
No, they aren't.
No,
Well,
they're not in the
Oh,
NRPC.
okay. You're
They're
right.
in our
Understand.
geographic
I agree
region.
with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, well, at any rate, I hadn't thought about that they aren't in NRPC, but they were there. Bedford was there and represented and talking about the development where the Macy's used to be and what its impacts have been. And Nashua was there, and I don't know, maybe there's probably, 30 people, 25 people?
Yeah.
20, 25, that's
Yep. And a bunch of the staff from the NRPC, and the discussion was kind of wherever it wanted to go. Jay Mankara did a little bit of steering of it here and there and kind of asking some questions, but it was really kind of a chance for anybody from any town to talk about what they're seeing and what given them fits and what other people are doing about it. And I guess the one thing that I can say from the follow-up of that, I did a lot of explaining about the way that we do things, and it reminded me that, we're in pretty good shape in terms of having some nice regulations and nice staff and nice projects and experiences and support from our fire department and our public works department and some of the things. There are a lot of towns who, I'd like to say they have one hand tied behind their back, but I think they got three hands tied behind their back in terms of what they're able to do as a planning board. There was a discussion about what to do with solar panels and ground-mounted solar arrays. There was change of use discussion. There was auxiliary dwelling units. I can't think of all of the things that were that came up and were discussed. Quite a few towns in our region have a planning board and nobody helping them. No staff, no peer review, no engineers, no. They just got to do it on their own, and boy, what a disadvantage to be in. And of course, those towns are also smaller, and there's less projects. I think one of the towns said they were happy to say that they had a meeting so far in 2018, but no projects yet. So
Makes it easier when you've got no staff.
The chairman is absolutely correct. I mean, I reckon we came out not quite tops, but damn close to tops of all the towns there. We really have got a good grip on what we're doing, and some of the other things that I just would roll my eyes quietly. I mean, the chairman did the talking and that was wonderful. But I just listened to some of the other towns and thinking, well, there we go.
Yeah. The one thing that I was surprised to see is I expected to hear from some towns that feel more restrictive about development than we are, or kind of have that spectrum of opinions about approaches to it. And I would think that almost everybody that spoke was supportive of development in their town.
Yeah.
Maybe they weren't getting any, but they wanted some. And they wanted to know what to do with it. And sometimes when they get it, they may get the neighbors upset and they don't ultimately vote for it. But at least from the people who came to the meeting, they were sort of wishful that they could get some things going in there.
Sort of to say that people on planning boards are interested in planning, not necessarily interested in locking down their facilities. Yeah. But certainly neighbors are not always that way, and that's one of the big issues some of the smaller towns were indicating, was that they'd like to get development in, but you always have to deal with, you're constantly dealing with the neighbors and change of flavor or change of environment that construction or planning would bring. And so they're struggling with those issues as well.
Did they talk about master plans at all and how they relate to what they do?
They did talk about them, and I think some discussion was saying you should be, I mean, there was talk about working on them sectionally so that you're doing them kind of constantly instead of trying to do them on a 5 or a 10-year basis all at once. But some of the smaller towns don't really have much going there because they don't have much guidance. NRPC attempts to help and has some circuit riders or something like that, people that are actually working with some of the larger small towns
Yes.
to have some guidance.
That was
for
when
them.
I was there. That was the way they were doing it. They had circuit riders in towns like Wilton and.
Yeah, and they were present and talking.
Yeah.
When the planning board member from that town was talking, they would look to
Yeah.
their NRPC compatriot and,
Yeah.
and get support with what they were saying. So they're
There's-
definitely still doing that.
A fair bit of discussion about sidewalks, a little bit of discussion about complete streets, and some towns that have some ambitions towards
Yeah.
adopting complete street regulations. And then other folks who are like, what's a complete street? Complicated mix of issues that were there.
Well, Nashua was indicating they're trying really hard to develop and implement complete street type
Yeah.
philosophies.
Still mixed information among towns about responsibilities to keep the snow off the sidewalks and when you get grant money and it's federal money and what the obligations are. And that's a discussion that's just a mud pit, so I just... Really?
Yep. Yep, that's what
Acknowledge
it
all those
is.
kinds of things. There was expressed intention to repeat the process of having this forum. However, there was also overlaying that a desire to divide the group into the bigs and the littles and have forums that focus on tiny town issues and ones that focus on towns with more stuff going on. And I'm glad to have the forums. I didn't mind hearing the tiny town issues and trying to lend some help or guidance to them. But if they want to kind of have a...
Yeah, it was more the tiny towns that wanted to have a tiny town forum,
Yeah.
if you will. That it wasn't the Merrimacs and Bedfords and Nashua saying we want
Yeah,
a
you guys
large
go away.
forum. Yeah, we don't want to deal with you
I
guys.
think it's because they felt to some extent swamped by the issues.
Overwhelmed,
that,
yeah.
Overwhelmed. Thanks, a better word. By what was going on in the bigger towns, and I think the sort of when Bob was talking and the gentleman from Nashua and the gentleman from Bedford, some of them their sort of jaws were bouncing off the floor when they realised what we do and what we handle, and
Well, they also
realised they hadn't got the resources to do it.
Well, the solutions that we give aren't feasible to them, and so
No.
me saying, you get your consulting engineer to look at your lighting plan and then have your town department write a letter, they're looking at me like I got 4 heads. I mean, I might as well be telling them to walk on the ceiling because they don't have the tools for
They
that.
just
so
don't have that, yeah.
they
But they
need
don't
small
have the
town
projects
solutions.
either. I mean, they don't have an MPO moving into Wilton.
Right.
Or anything of that nature, so it sort of goes along with the territory.
There were a handful of towns that you could tell recognized the interconnectivity of issues like pedestrians and transportation and jobs and housing and all of the pieces. And then there were a lot of folks who just sort of were like thinking in terms of what's my next agenda going to look like and what do I do with that? So.
There was some interest expressed in the Merrimack Parcel A or Park Place project. People are looking at that to see how it develops and how it works out.
Yeah.
Because it is a new kind of development for this region, if you will.
Mhm.
They're certainly all over the country,
Yeah.
but to that level of mixed use. But
And because they did comment on that somebody quoted a statistics which implied that the number of young people driving cars was actually getting less rather than getting more. Although I look at each of the high schools in this area, I can't believe that's true. But it's another matter.
I don't know. I had more than one car when I was in high school because I had one to take apart and one to drive in. And
No comment.
And did either one of them run?
yeah, the one I drove in ran most of the time. Okay, so that's what that was. I thought it was a great experience. If they do it again, I encourage everybody to kind of get a chance to get involved. I did meet and shake hands with some folks. Some of the people from the construction companies, like Fulcrum Construction, are either the planning board or zoning board members of different towns, or the circuit riders, or whatever. They're giving some advice to some of this. So some of the towns are benefiting from some of that stuff. There was only a little bit of talk about where you get planning board members from and how do you keep your board full. There wasn't a whole lot of discussion about that, I don't think, but a little bit.
Yeah.
So, if it comes around again, I'd recommend you put it on your calendar. They had some sodas and cheese too. It was good.
Cheese and crackers, yeah.
I spoke with Jay this morning about other things, but I asked him if he was going to do it again, because I'd like to participate. And he said he was thinking about doing it in September. So, just
All right.
Yeah, we talked about 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah.
Not necessarily quarterly, but
Yeah.
maybe more often than twice. So.
No, I agree. I think that we've had some really good experiences with NRPC supporting our pedestrian stuff, but I think even we're only scratching the surface of their capabilities in terms of what they could do to help us with stuff.
Yeah.
And it actually is, in the one sense, us asking them for things is work to do, but it also gives them the projects that they need to go apply for some grant money to show that they're doing some things that are important to the towns. So there's a synergy there that works for them too. Anyway.
And it doesn't hurt that they're in Merrimack now.
Yeah. Although the one thing that I know that Executive Park Drive is going to get repaved and reconfigured and narrowed and all that stuff, but that's the one thing that I thought when I got in my car to leave there. I'm like, they're in the ugliest, crappiest street we got in town.
That's true.
It's got this pile of rocks and chain link fence and broken pavement, and I mean, it's just an awful little stretch of road down there.
But it will look better soon, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I know, but
Fine soon.
I wasn't meaning the road. I'm meaning some of the piles of rocks when they
Well,
build this
when they build.
residential development.
When they build. How long is it taking Flatley to break ground?
a little bit.
Now let's get on that one.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other discussion items?
No,
Okay.
sir.
Moving on, then we've got a set of minutes to consider, and it's the minutes of June 5th, 2018. What's the will of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept the minutes of June the 5th as submitted.
I would second that, Mr. Chairman.
There's a motion and a second to accept the minutes as submitted. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining?
I'm going to abstain. I didn't really get a chance to review them.
Okay, 401 to approve the minutes of June 5th, and they are approved. That brings us to the final item on our agenda, which is consideration of adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, before we do that, could I ask that we give the community development team some direction? Are we going to stick with what we've had this meeting, or are we going to go back to paper?
Okay, so let's take a second for the motion.
All right,
We can't-
I'll second the motion.
There's
to
no
adjourn.
discussion, that's it.
And then discuss the motion to adjourn.
No, you can't discuss the motion to adjourn. All right. Let's hold the motion to adjourn for a second. Let's have a more full discussion about the paper or not paper at our next meeting when everybody's had a chance to think about it rather than stuff in the
All
air
right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
now. So Tom's got a motion to adjourn. Alistair second. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining? 500. We're adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. And don't forget to turn your microphones off.